Hello, thanks for joining us at SoloCon. In this talk, we're going to be talking about the developer portal for Istio, the Glue portal. We're going to be talking about cataloging your REST and GRPC APIs as well. My name is Chris Gaughan. I'm the Director of Product Management here at solo.io. You could find me on the community Slack at Gaughnerd. You could also find me on Twitter at Gaughanetes. Been in the Kubernetes space for over 6 years, so I picked up that tag. I'm joined today with Marco Schmidt. Marco is our Glue portal leader. We have a bunch of technical leads for all our products, as well as some of our major features of those products. And they lead the team as well as leading the technical effort. You can find him on the solo.io community Slack at Marco as well. We'd love to hear from you. Please reach out. Don't be shy. DM me, DM Marco. Again, anything that you heard in the talk that you'd like to talk about, any feature enhancements that you would suggest, just please reach out. First, a poll. I'd like to learn a little bit about your current usage of Glue and the Glue portal. So we're going to take a few seconds. Please indicate to us if you're currently a Glue Edge user and a portal user. Or number two, I'm currently a Glue Edge user, but I don't currently use the Glue portal. And number three, if you don't use Glue Edge nor Glue portal, if you're new to solo.io in general, please choose number three. We'll give you a few seconds. And this is pre-recorded, so I'm going to feign surprise. A few more seconds. Well, that was very interesting results. Take that back to the product team. For today's agenda for the talk, again, we're going to be talking about a developer portal for Istio, why you need it, why it's important for your API business or your API growth. We're going to be talking about accelerating cloud-native APIs. And then we're going to be talking about the first developer portal for gRPC. Just a hint, it's going to be the Glue portal. And then lastly, after we demo all the new features in Glue portal, we're going to be talking about the roadmap for the portal. First, what is Glue portal? Well, Glue portal is a product for cataloging and exposing your APIs running in Glue Edge or Istio Service Mesh to your developers, to your partners, and community. It is a UI. Don't get me wrong. There's an admin UI. There's a developer UI. You'll see both those use cases and both those roles. But it's more than just a UI. It's a Kubernetes native service. We built it using CRDs so that it works with your command line, with your GitOps workflow, with your existing Kubernetes talents. Anything that you can do on a Kubernetes object, you can do in the portal in the command line, RBAC on environments, and so on and so forth. So we'll show you everything in the UI, but again, in the back end, it is just a bunch of Kubernetes CRDs. You heard a lot about the rise of Istio in this conference. Why Istio is so popular, the growth of Istio. I want to specifically talk about the rise of Istio in the context of why you need a portal for Istio. But some of you might say, well, I have Istio on my cluster, on all my clusters. Do I really need a developer portal for this? My developers use the CLI. They're never going to use a UI. They don't need that discovery. They don't need documentation of the API. Let me just talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the market and what we're seeing from our users. First, and this is obvious at this point, Istio has won. It is when the CNCF asked what service mesh the people attending KubeCon were using in production, Istio was by far the most popular with 42.5%. Other common service meshes might have other different use cases, but Istio's growth or command of this market is only going to grow. And you see that in the Google trends. That red line, that momentum is for Istio. As soon as it dropped, it just took off. I've been in this market again for over 6 years. When people were talking about Kubernetes versus Docker versus Mesos versus CoreOS Fleet and a bunch of other orchestration tools. And you saw the same type of breakout growth. You saw Kubernetes land. There was some early adopters like myself and others that were interested in it and evangelized it. And it just took off. So this is Istio, that red line, versus some of the competitive open source initiatives or products out there. And I didn't want to put their names in there because I didn't want to drag them through the mud. But you could actually see that Istio is by far trending in the right direction. And we're obligated in every talk about cloud native to have a Kelsey Hightower quote. It's actually contractually obligation, as well as something that's just in the book of cloud native. So I love Kelsey, and these are 2 great quotes of his that I just wanted to put out there to help you understand and wrap your head around Istio in case you don't use it yet. And that is, Istio is to Envoy what Kubernetes is to Docker. So if you understand that relationship of just, I had a container, isn't that good enough? No, Kubernetes, you actually need the orchestration for all these other reasons. You'll understand why you need Istio in comparison to Envoy. One is the basic building blocks for a much larger and grand system of your distributed system. And another great quote that I found of his is, Istio is also the glue, it should be GLOO, between Envoy and platforms like Kubernetes. Great, Istio has won. Why do I need a developer portal for Istio? I have all my services hooked up. They all communicate to each other. They communicate in ways that I never thought were possible. Mutual TLS, you have cross-cluster communication. Why do I need this API management? Well, I have a bunch of different services, all with different APIs, potentially different API types. That's hard to control. That's hard to break into different products that I can then show and give to my customers, my partners, and my developers, even internally. And so you want to be able to catalog those APIs in your own branding. You want to be able to slice them and dice them into whatever product and release them or version them in a way that you see fit, based on the environment, based on the cluster, based on the type. The next thing is, you don't want to always have the developer coming to you for APIs or how you get to them, what's the endpoint, and so on and so forth. So you want to make it self-service for developers. You might have developers outside of your organization from partners or customers. And you want to make it so that they could get into the portal or wherever you're keeping this catalog and start trying the APIs out. And that brings us to the last point, where you want to be able to potentially monetize these APIs. Not all the time. You have internal use cases, you have different teams using APIs, but there are use cases if you want to be a Stripe, or if you even want to be, a Spotify or a Twitter and have partners build on your API and have an ecosystem. You want to be able to control the usage, and monetization is key for that. Now, there's going to be a bunch of different features we talk about, both in past releases and future releases, but this is how you can think about why you would want to implement API management and a developer portal for your Istio cluster. It's really going to accelerate your adoption of cloud-native APIs by 10x. It's going to continue that Cambrian explosion that we've seen in cloud-native development over the past 5, 6, 7 years, and take it through the roof. So what is in Glue Portal for Istio and Edge specifically? Well, we have the self-service, we have traffic control, we have authentication, we have OpenAPI as well as gRPC, which you'll see today. We have the custom branding, and you'll see some of that, although we'll use generic brands. The cloud native architecture, which I talked about, where we're using Kubernetes CRDs so that it works with your existing skill set as well as your GitOps workflow. And then that Istio and Glue Edge support as well. Well, let me introduce you to the Glue portal, your developer portal for Glue Edge as well as Istio. A Glue portal sits in front of Istio. It sits in front of Glue Edge. And you heard about Glue Edge 2.0. So all these things are merging together. And it really abstracts that APIs and services from those clusters into an easy to read catalog that is self-service for your developers, that they could test out those APIs instantly. If you have Istio, you're saying, oh, I could already reach those services, I could already reach those APIs. Of course you can. But putting a portal in front of it, putting those abstractions of product environment and so on, helps you slice and dice those services and give it to different users based on their role, based on whether they're a partner, based on whether they're an internal developer. It helps you set up policy for those different services, like rate limiting, so that they can only use the API a certain amount of time, and eventually monetize those APIs that you have integrated with Istio. But what are the portal enhancements that you're going to see today? You're going to see a little bit of what existed in the portal previous to Glue Edge 1.7. A lot of you are new. I want to make sure that you are introduced to the portal in general. But we're here also to talk about what's going to be in the portal in the next 2 weeks. We have a release candidate for Glue Edge 1.7, which is available now. Go download it, test it out. But also that is going GA at the end of March. So right after the conference, you'll get home. Theoretically, we're all at home, but you'll get home and you'll be able to test it out. In the new portal, in 1.7 of Glue Edge, we've added GRPC API types, which you'll see. We're able to authenticate the user, not just to get into the portal, but against those APIs themselves, which is an excellent feature. Previously, we supported API keys. We've expanded that. And then we'll talk about making your APIs public, but require users to log in so that they can read the APIs, read the documentation, but then and actually to try them out or use them, you have to require them to sign in because you want to prevent distributed denial of service and other things. With that, I want to talk a little bit about why GRPC? Why did we take on this monumental effort to put GRPC into the portal? Given that the popularity of REST is 61%, and it keeps on going up. You see more and more REST APIs. They're not going anywhere. So why GRPC? Why potentially GraphQL in the future? Well, you've seen this with a lot of technology development over the years. You have something that has been released that is getting a wide adoption, and then larger companies start to see some of the limitations in that wide technology. Even if it covers most of the use cases, there's maybe different ways you want to do things or different edge cases, and where better technology would be more well suited. And so that's what happened. That's what's happening with REST. It's still extremely popular. Again, the growth is not bounded in any way. You can see more and more REST APIs. But you saw companies like Google and Facebook think about this a little bit differently and want to do it a little bit differently. And when that happens, what tends to happen in the market is that you see this accelerated adoption because there's a much wider use cases, there's different ways of thinking about it, and just newer technologies that enable really cool things. You saw this with big data. You saw this with containers when Kubernetes was released. You saw this with machine learning with TensorFlow. And now you're seeing it with these different API types. So what are these different API types and how are they growing? Again, I'll fall back to Google Trends. The top line, the blue line is REST, been around again since 2000. And it's very popular, not going anywhere. REST APIs are, it's a dime a dozen. You see them all over the place, all over AWS and all the cloud providers. But look at the yellow line and look at the red line. GraphQL, which originally came out of Facebook to address some of the shortcomings of REST, as well as gRPC that came out of Google. You see also that breakout growth of those two technologies as well. So I don't want to have our users of the portal choose between REST and GraphQL and gRPC. Eventually, I want to have all those in the portal. I want to have one place for all your cloud native APIs. Right? We started with Open API Spec. That was a great way to put REST into the portal. We now have gRPC. You'll see that today. And then tomorrow, the figurative tomorrow, we'll have GraphQL. And Glue Portal, I want to remind you, is not just a developer portal for Istio. It is, and that's great. And I don't think there's any other developer portal for Istio, but it is also the only enterprise gRPC portal in the market that I know of. There's other open source efforts, but if you want something that has support, that has gRPC next to REST, this is the only game in town. So again, download it, try it. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Marco to demo it.
Okay, so I am going to go through a quick demo, and I will focus on how Glue Portal can help you iterate on the design of your APIs together with the developers that consume them, and also how you can use it to automatically configure your gateway, be it the Istio Ingress gateway or Glue Edge. So I'm going to start the demo from the perspective of the API producer, so the administrator of Glue Portal. And I have a Kubernetes cluster here with Istio installed. You can see that I have my Istio Ingress gateway there. I also have Glue Portal installed, and I have deployed two simple applications, a REST application and a gRPC application, so that we can use them as examples. I'm going to log into my admin dashboard, and I'm going to start by importing API definitions in the system. So API docs, how we call them, are the building block for Glue Portal. These represent your API specifications. And I'm going to start by defining REST API doc. I have a service that is serving an Open API specification on an endpoint, and I can point Glue Portal to that so that it can automatically fetch the specification and parse it. And now it's available in the system. You can see that we have 4 operations here. The next step is to define an API product. So an API product is a way of bundling internal APIs together so that you can expose them to your external users as a single homogeneous API on which you can apply policy uniformly. So I'm going to call this API product pet store. I'm going to give it a nice image that will show up in the portal. And I'm going to create an initial version. Let's really say a work in progress version, calling it V0. I'm telling the system where to route traffic to. In this case, this represents a Kubernetes service. And I'm also going to apply a custom label, a tag, work in progress tag, to show that the API is evolving. And to begin with, I'm only going to add 3 operations, although my service has 4 available. We'll see in a second why I'm doing that. And my API product is ready, so you can see that I have my V0 defined here. And the next step to publish my API is to add it to an environment. So an environment is basically a domain that you're exposing on your gateway. And this is where Glue Portal will start generating configuration for your gateway to expose those routes. So in this case, I have 2 environments, and in an environment, I can apply policy to an API. So for the integration environment, I'm not going to define any auth policies because I want users to be able to freely test the APIs. And for the production environment, instead, I'm going to enforce rate limit and authentication policies. So let's add my API to the integration environment. Okay, so you can see that our V0 is here. And I'm also going to add that API to my portal. So a portal is a dynamic web application that we generate and that has a specific look and feel that you can customize so to adapt it to your style guidelines. So I'm going to add my V0 pet store to the portal, and then I need to update my user. So I created a user here to represent an external developer, and I need to give them access to the API. So I'm going to do that, and they already have access to the portal. Okay, so now I should be all set to navigate to the portal and switch to developer persona. So this is the portal homepage. You can see that it shows the styles that we defined here, and you can really easily customize the portal. So I'm going to show a simple example. So for example, if I want to change the color, the primary color of buttons. I can make that change here, and it immediately propagates to the UI. So, and you can customize the portal in a lot of different ways. You can provide your own custom style sheet so that you can customize the CSS of the portal completely. You can add static pages or dynamic pages. So you can really make it out to be the portal that fulfills your needs. So now let's log into the portal with the credentials that I've shared with my developer. It's the first login, so it will prompt me to update my password. And once I've done that, I can see the API that I just published. You can see that you can filter it. I'll show it when we have a couple more APIs. But we can see that we have our 3 operations, and the developer can see all the necessary information to consume this API, and they can also test it. So now let's say that I realize as a developer that I also need another endpoint, one that allows me to list all the pets in my pet store and not only to retrieve them by ID. So I would convey that feedback to the API developer. And as a Glue Portal admin, I can come back to my product and I can define a new version starting from V0 as a blueprint. I can create V1. And let's assume that the API is going to be stable. So I'm going to add a stable tag. And for V1, I'm going to add that extra operation that I already had included in my service. In a real world use case, you would probably deploy a new version and update your spec. So now that I have defined my service, I can update my environment to publish that next to my V0 pet store. So I'm going to add V1 REST pet store, and now it should be available in the portal UI. So you can see that I can filter by the custom tags they have defined. And now if I try the V1 of my API, I see the endpoint that I requested, and it allows me to list all my pets. This was the REST API, and I also want to show the GRPC API support that we recently added. So to that end, I already created an API doc that uses reflection to pull the specification for my GRPC service directly from my service. So I have reflection enabled, and I'm able to introspect the service. And you can see that I can detect all the operation and also the operation types. I've also already defined an API product for this service. So you can see that this looks very similar to the REST one. And now I'm going to add that service as well to my integration environment. So I've added the GRPC service, and I need to give my user, again, update my user to give them permission to see that API. We don't want them to accidentally have access to something we didn't intend to. And once I've updated the permissions for my user, I will be able to see my GRPC application here. Again, I can filter here in case I have a lot of APIs. I can filter out only the ones that I'm interested in. In this case, it's the GRPC one. You can see that how Chris mentioned, like the look and feel is exactly the same as for the REST API. You can see all your services defined on your server, all the methods defined for all those services. And also you can see all the different types that you need to provide as inputs and that you will get as outputs when you execute a remote procedure call. And similarly to the REST API, I can test the API. So here I'm going to not filter, so I get all my pets, and you can see that I get all my pets via the GRPC API as well. So now let's say that I decided that the V1 pet store REST API is ready for production. So I want to promote it to the production environment and add authentication to it. So what I need to do is very similar to what I already did. I just add my V1 pet store application to the production environment, and I'm going to define what we call a usage plan. So a usage plan is what defines an auth and a rate limit policy. So we already had API key support. We recently added OAuth support. That means that only API requests that have a valid OAuth access token will be allowed to make it through to the API. So I'm going to call this, give this plan a name, basic auth. And I have DEX deployed to my cluster. DEX is an OpenID Connect identity provider that implements the OAuth 2 specification. So I need to tell the system about the URLs of the token and authorization endpoint. I will request the OpenID scope so that I can initiate an OpenID Connect flow. And since the token I get back will be JSON Web Token, I will configure that validation mechanism. So this will configure the Istio or Glue Edge gateway to validate those tokens. And I need to also provide a JSON web key set to verify the signature of the tokens. I'll give it the URL where DEX exposes it, and I want the system to refresh the JSON web key set every 5 seconds. Lastly, I want to enforce a rate limit of 2 requests per minute for my API. This applies per consumer, per API, per environment. So you can really have really granular rate limits for your APIs. Okay, once this is done, I need to go back and update my user to give them access to the new API and also to the usage plan. I need to do this because you can have multiple usage plans with different policies and rate limits for a single API, and you might want different users to have access to different rate limits. Let's also make sure that I have published my API to the portal. So yes, let's publish the production API to the portal as well. Okay, now switching back to the developer persona, you can see that now I have a production version of my pet store. So I can switch to using the production version. Now, if I test the API, you will see that I will get a 403 error because it didn't provide any credentials. So what I can do as a developer is I can open this dialog and I can provide the client credentials for my application so that I can request a token. So this will redirect me to DEX, to the login page where I can authenticate with identity provider. So I'm going to provide my credentials, and this will authenticate the portal application. And now I can execute a request and get a 200. And at the third request, I will get a 429 because I've been rate limited according to my usage plan. Now, this concludes the demo. One thing I want to mention is that you can, the APIs are behind the login, but as Chris mentioned, there's also an option to make the APIs publicly available, and users will need to log in only to provision credentials. And yeah, this concludes my demo.
Thank you, Marco. And again, everything that you saw, all done by CRDs. You could do that with your GitOps workflow, with CLI. We really love wrangling with YAML. It's all there. I don't want to eat too much into the question time. We will take questions at the end. We're going to talk a little bit about the roadmap, though, because I want to show you all the goodies that are coming for the Glue portal. Now, these are initiatives. They are not specific features that we're working on. You could think of them more as insights that we gathered from our user base and customers, and synthesize this into work streams that may take several quarters or even the entire year. But we are working fast, so I think you'll see most of this by the end of Q2. The first up is multi-cluster support. This is a widely requested feature. This is also something that we are currently working on right now as part of just the larger effort to integrate with Glue Mesh as well as the Glue Edge 2.0. Increase API types. You saw us adopt GRPC and have a similar workflow in UX to REST using OpenAPI. There's other API types out there. We mentioned GraphQL, and there's a GraphQL ongoing right now for Glue Edge. And so you'll see it drop there first, but I'd like to get that into the developer portal as well. Monetization, this is something that we're going to spend a lot of time next quarter working on. We don't have any monetization in the portal right now. Monetization is a big topic. There's plans like gold, silver, there's usage plans. We're going to start working on that very soon. And so you'll see something drop in Q2. Self-service. We have a lot of self-service capability right now in the Glue portal. Developers could come in, use your IDP, your existing IDP. You could actually do a workflow if you have Okta. Okta has a self-service workflow, so you could set that up with Glue portal as well. So all that is well and good. There's some features and some refinements and some UX and some documentation that we'd like to get around self-service to make it easier for you, the user. Security, this is a perennial topic for us. We are an enterprise company. We've delivered HTTPS in the portal as well as the APIs, and we're going to continue to be very concerned about security, CVE scannings and whatnot as we develop the product. And then expanding edge integration. We get a lot of requests of the type of, I can do this in Glue Edge. Can I do this in the portal? And we'd like the answer to that to always be yes, or most of the time be yes. There's some caveats right now where you need static upstreams or something, and the portal doesn't support that right now, or you'd have to switch over to Glue Edge. We'd like to have a different way of thinking or a different way of doing this so that you can more widely use the Glue Edge features that you care about. This is just another way of looking at the roadmap, broken down into what we're delivering this quarter, what we're delivering next quarter. We're very agile here. You'll see that when you join the Slack. Please join the Slack. The Slack channel is specifically for Portal specifically. I take user feedback very seriously. If you have a request, we're going to try to deliver that as soon as possible that we can do with our other engineering efforts going around. So what we're going to work on, next quarter, meaning next month, starting next month, and some of this effort has already started, is the multi-cluster support is a big one, the monetization, as well as that expanded Glue Edge use cases. Okay, what's the next steps? You love this talk. I'm glad to have you here. What do you do now? Go download the new Glue Edge 1.7. It's right now in a release candidate. It will be GA in a couple of weeks. Ask us for a key and try out the portal. We'd love to have your feedback. We'd love to, have you try out the new features. Join the Slack channel, not just Glue Slack. Solo.io Slack. Go and join the Glue Portal channel specifically. Again, we're very interactive. I'm in the channel. You could DM me directly, and I'd love to hear from you. New to the Glue portal in general, you never touched it or you want to get your hands on it. Another way to do that is through these workshops. We have one at the last day of SoloCon. If that is full, which it probably is, don't worry, just sign up for the wait list. We're going to have another workshop, I promise you. And we'll invite you to that and you can go to that one. I think all the workshops had like 100 seats and they're all waitlisted. But maybe some people dropped, and either way, just sign up, get waitlisted. We'll be in touch. Okay, with that, I would like to take your questions now. Remember, we are in a pandemic still. Be careful, be safe, go get vaccinated if you're qualified. And so with that, thank you for joining us. Thank you for spending the time at SoloCon, and let's take your questions.